Welcome to another episode of the Altered Attitudes podcast. Today we're joined once again by Rehabs UK's Managing Director, Lester Morse. Morning, Lester.
G'day.
So today we want to talk a little bit about the use of ketamine and fentanyl and the rise of that in the UK. It's obviously got alarming implications, and we're seeing a lot of social media having an effect on that. Recent data from the government and the Office of National Statistics show that the number of young people experimenting with ketamine has tripled since 2005, and fentanyl-related deaths are also on the rise in the UK as well. So I know, older people, everybody's using social media now as well, but I think young people are particularly more susceptible. But we want to unpack that a little bit today. So this government data, it shows that since 2005, when ketamine was made an illegal Class B drug, the number of people trying it actually tripled, which is also something kind of interesting to unpack there as well. So, Lester, I want to know, what are the key factors do you think that are driving this increase in ketamine use among young people, and perhaps things like fentanyl as well? If it wasn't ketamine, would it be another substance? I think you're probably going to say that it would be, but I'd like to know your thoughts on that. And additionally, do you see this rising trend continuing? Like, what measures could we do to stop it from continuing, to curb it, as you will? And I just want to say, I was having a little chat to you before we start to hit record there, and again talking about sort of social media and how easy it is to be advertised and get hold of drugs through web, apps like Snapchat and what have you, of disappearing messages. Whenever we post anything about ADHD or even mental health on our social medias, immediately we get a bunch of bots commenting, trying to upsell mushrooms and microdosing to help people's mental health, which if something in there feels like morally quite wrong, but when you read the messages, they're kind of written in such a way that it's appealing to people's weaknesses. Oh, you've been struggling all this time, and did you know there's an answer, and it's this, and it's usually it's a drug, it's like a mushroom, a psychedelic or something like that. I know it's quite a lot to unpack there, but I'd love to know your thoughts on some of that.
All right, mate. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's like we say quite a lot. I don't think there is sort of a answer. I think it's a number of things that have to come together. And again, I'm just one point of view on probably one side of the fence. There's very strong opinions on, there's sort of two sides of the fence. There's kind of like the abstinence side, which is kind of where I come down on overall, and then you've got the harm minimalisation. They're quite opposing. I don't think they necessarily should be, but they are, and it is one of them things that's there's always two very strong poles to every debate. So I'm only giving you my opinion as I see it up to this point. I could change my mind at any time given different information, but again, I'm just interested in drug addiction and society and stuff like that, and I can't help conclude that society's failed and is failing where drug addiction's concerned, and most things, it seems, at the moment. I mean, just coming up to this election, I want to say I don't want to get political, but you start realising everything is political. It's hard not to be political, isn't it? We got these people at the top that are deciding the strategies and which one that we're going to employ, and massive amounts of a big portion of my money goes to it, and I'm usually coming out the other end very unhappy with the service that I've been given by these public servants. But it's interesting to me that, and again, I've tried and find evidence of this. So again, it's hard for me to fact check. It's just something that I've heard, but it makes sense to me that in the 70s, they had a lot of these guys, that travelled to India, Afghanistan, and that kind of thing, like hippie kind of travellers back in the day. And they got involved on the opium and the heroin, and then they've come back to England with these addictions, and they were being prescribed heroin, like pharmaceutical grade heroin, which ultimately, as far as I understand, again, I'm not a professor, but what I understand is doesn't actually harm any of your organs if you don't overdo it. It's not really a. It's not. It's. I think alcohol's kind of worse for you than pure heroin if you don't overdo it. Which the overdo it bit is the ultimate overall issue, I think. But some things that are very addictive you can't control. And again, control seems to be the big question of how can you help people control their substance intake. And again, we get into that probably as we go along. But anyway, I think what I remember reading somewhere is that when that was happening, there was about 200 sort of registered heroin addicts in England, and but once somebody heard about it and didn't like it, they decided to make it against the law for doctors to prescribe it. And then I think what I read was in the first year it had gone from 200 to 2,000 heroin addicts, and it's just been climbing ever since. So I don't know if, well, seems to be a correlation to the government getting involved and things getting worse. If that's true, you can imagine why society's such a mess, because they got their sticky little hands and noses in everything, and everything seems to be getting worse. Because you see, the truth is, it's like, again, and I don't think this is questionable, but if you look at the money spent on addiction treatment today than 30 years ago, it's massive for more money. There's massive more people. There's more complex problems. Again, there could be so many reasons for this, but the more the government fund treating it, the worse the problem seems to get. And I can't honestly give you a reason why I think that is. I could give you what I believe a spiritual reason is, but a scientific common sense reason, I don't know. It just seems to be the fact. And because they're always in control of the treatment, the finance, the narrative, they have, all the research, they produce their own facts. But personally, and again, it may be because I'm a kind of person, I very rarely agree with what they're saying. I don't believe what they're saying is the truth. I believe they believe it. I just don't believe it's actually matches reality. I just don't get a feeling that they're in tune with the real world. It might be the world they're living in. I don't know. I've never lived in their world. I don't think I'd enjoy living in their world. I don't seem to feel that comfortable around them, and I think that's a mutual feeling. But I've always found it, and again, even doing drug and alcohol treatment successfully, I found the biggest problem I had was the law, the government, funding, anything they were in control of made everything, I kind of get, if somebody said to me, what do you think the definition of government is? I'd say make everything hard and expensive. Just cause everything to fail, because ultimately everything they do seems to fail. Not, again, can't say everything. The roads seem to run not too bad. I've been to Africa and that. We might have more potholes than normal because of funding, but I just think that we're heading in this. They just make everything hard and expensive, and I think they interfere. So, I feel people like myself that was very successful in treatment, you kind of give up. I'm just exhausted by it in the end. But not by helping the people with addiction, but by dealing with the red tape, the government, always trying to do the right thing and work in the statutories and not go for all the riches in the private sector. And in the end, they just cause you to fail. They just constantly do things that make your life unbearable. So I think then you produce a certain kind of person in a certain kind of treatment provider. you know, as I was sort of cut, and again, I'm just telling you my experience, whether I'm right or wrong, I don't 100% know. I'm just telling you this is my experience, and I believe what I'm saying is part of the truth, at least because I experienced it over a long period. But as I was getting more involved with like statutories, which are sort of government funded treatment providers, some of the bigger um, treatment providers that I would talk to that had been here for a long time, they would often warn me. They would say, look, don't take their money if you can help it. Because what they start doing is because before they can give you the money, you've got to meet all these criterias. And it might not line up with your ethos and what you're doing. And at some point, what you're doing, you'll probably have to stop doing it so much because you're going to have to do the things that they want you to do. And then you become dependent on them. And then the things that you're actually doing that are actually working and causing good outcomes, you start finding that there's pressure on you to do what they want, not what you want. And then eventually you kind of stop working. That didn't really happen to me because I ended up, I just stopped working with them because they nearly destroyed me. It was like being in a relationship because, again, I've only ever had one agenda really, and that was to sort of help people get free of drugs and alcohol. But when you're involved with people with a political agenda, their agenda moves around a lot. Mine never did. So around about 2015, our agendas kind of aligned, and they kind of helped enhance what I was doing for about 4 years or so, and then they cut the money. But by then I was kind of like 50% dependent on them, and so 50% of our project collapsed. And again, it's not just the fact that it collapses. You lose a lot of people that you trained to create an environment that's conducive to recovery. You lose a half of them. You lose half of your projects that were designed to help people in long-term recovery, and it wears you out. It wears all your management out. It wears you out because instead of focusing on helping people get well, which is quite difficult and it takes a lot out of you because you have to kind of be in relationship with them, which means you have to use your own emotions, your own body, and then you've got this massive pressure and problems that are being caused by your government. And they just grind you down. They just wear you out. And so my point here is, from my experience, when you thin a lot of the people out, you end up with a group of people that are doing what you want, ultimately for the money. I think they're good people, most of them. I'm not saying they're not bad people and they got just doing it for the money, but I think you end up like in a society where it's like, like I think the whole country's doing it, where they put policy and procedure before outcome, and it's soul destroying. Now I believe your soul is between your ears. It's kind of your soul's kind of attached to your brain. It's like the thought life part of your being. And so when your soul's being destroyed, your brain's being destroyed. It's being overloaded and pressurized. And it's not pleasant, and I don't think it's a natural state. I don't think we were designed to do as much as what we're doing. I think that's what's happening with the social media. It's everybody's doing far more than they're intended. So even children on their social media. Look, you get it with TikTok. How often do you sit there with TikTok and you think, I just flick through it, and you're an hour or two later, you're still doing it, and you feel shit. You've put your brain through more than what it should go through, and it creates a lot of anxiety and stuff. So I think as humans, we're only meant to take a certain load. We can take heavy loads, but only for short periods of time. Like I can carry a heavy weight, but not far. But I think that this society, they produce a heavy weight that you can't carry far. It wears you out. And so even though what we were doing was wonderful, it was amazing, and everybody that knew what we were doing and had experienced what we were doing would say it was such a wonderful place, in this world, there was too much weight put on it by the government. And it crushes you. So even it was financially successful. I was making money when I closed. Good money. It's half full, making good money. Rehab's good money. Rehabs are making good money when they're full up. Successful outcomes, very successful outcomes, making good money with successful outcomes, but couldn't bear it anymore because of the government pressure. Policies, procedures just wore us out. And then you get to where you're thinking, what are they going to do next? What are they going to do next? And it's like, I don't want to do it anymore. And so an opportunity arose. I think just people get worn out. And I think then COVID come and that accelerated it. In actual fact, that 4 months of lockdown was the best time I'd had in 20 years. It was like being away from them lot. Even it was just nice having a rest. And so overall, mate, I believe that's what's the problem in the country. I believe the way that the country is, it's only allowing a certain portion of what we can do to be done. And I don't think the other part that we need to get better outcomes is allowed to exist, which is kind of why I think the only way it's going to exist is through the churches, through the 12-step programs, through anything that's not funded by the government. I think the government have not got the answers. I think what they're funding is usually making it worse. But even like the prison system, I hope this isn't a rant, but this is my life and my experience, is that, you know, you do get the ranting about things that are important to you, don't you? It's like, for example, like Blundestone is a good example, because I spent about 10 years going in the prisons and doing talks and workshops and stuff like that. And I really, you know, again, it's a very difficult environment to create a decent spirit in people. It kind of brings the worst out in people. If look, you're a nice lad, but if I put you in prison for 3 or 4 years, it would bring the worst out in you. Isn't it? What a ridiculous system that is, isn't it? That if you get a nice lad and put him in a prison, he's going to come out probably worse. You get a lad that's struggling and put him in a prison, it's a terrible system. It's another failing system. And because they're disgusting. You listen on the news, you know, they're dirty, they're old, they're depressing. And see, when you got a mind like mine, I used to go into Bovingdon prison and Blundestone mostly. And when I first started going into Bovingdon prison, it was nice gardens, decorated well, there was projects, there was education. Last time I went in there, about 4 years ago, I come out nearly in tears. It was a shithole. There was broken furniture, people were lying, the staff were lying, the wallpaper was flaking. You could feel the bad energy, mate, and you could see it. It was like the place had gone to pot. And the same in Blundestone. The years, 10 years ago when I went in there, they had an incredible printing. They could printers. They had a proper, fully functioning, state-of-the-art printers in there, so you could go and learn to be a printer. It was fantastic. They had fantastic woodworking shops. You could go and they used to have an incredible garden project where you could do gardening. They would have the most incredible flower baskets, hanging baskets that people would order and take home. They had birds you could look after. It was clean, it was tidy, everyone was working, it was vibrant, it was colourful. They had a great gym, you know, there was great education. When you went in there, people seemed to be, almost inspired. And I thought, this is wonderful. In the middle of the prison, they had like a little rehab going on, which was the interest I had. It was fantastic. But then very slowly, as it was becoming defunded, it turned into a dirty shithole. A dirty shithole. They spent about X amount, I don't know the exact figure, I want to say 5 or 12 million, putting a new roof on it, and then they closed it down. They closed prisons down, and now they've got overloaded prisons. It's insane. And then they're putting these men in these dirty, overcrowded cesspits full of drugs and mental illness. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And if you go in there, it makes you. I felt full of anxiety. I felt full of fear. And I thought, how do these people survive in here? This is like inhumane, to people that really need something more. They need something better than that to help them redevelop. Instead, they're going to be angry, and I think they have every right to be angry, to be treated like that. I don't think they're being treated any worse than they've behaved. And I think it's shameful. And again, it's ridiculous because it's not even cheap. It's not even cheap to put someone in prison. It costs more to put them in prison than most of them could possibly earn in a year. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And it's like, where is all the money going? Where is all the money going? Because as far as I know in life, I'm a 58-year-old man, and I'm on the firm conclusion, if there's a problem in a business, in a restaurant, in a prison, in a hospital, in the Navy, in anywhere, it's because we got bad management. Period. You go anywhere that's good and functioning and running well and efficient, it's good management. And you can have somewhere with tons of money pumped into it like the NHS and it not giving a good return, bad management. It's just bad management. And yet we let them have another go at managing it, another go at managing it. So again, I don't know how they're going to solve it. It seems to me we need one good leader. Just for a short period of time, maybe for 4 years or something, might be a good idea. Maybe if we could vote for a good leader, just for 4 years, I think that'd be a good system. We could call it something like, I don't know, democracy, something like that. Instead of this, again, mate, look, I ain't even saying I got all the answers. I don't even know the alphabet. I couldn't even read and write at 25. Had a lot of mental health issues and social problems and all the rest of it. I've just sort of developed myself. So, I'm sure there's lots of guys that have been to Oxford and Cambridge, listen to someone like me and screaming what an idiot I am, and they might be right, but I've done pretty well in helping people by creating the right environment. That's all I know. And I've been very successful at it. That's all I know. I've not been hindered by all of that. The thing I found that was most hindering was the society who seemed to be, look, when they were behind me, did good. When they got in front of me and got in my way, they slowed me down and robbed all my energy, took all the wind out of my sails. They were soul destroying. I'm not in the soul destroying business. Drugs are soul destroying. I'm in the soul raising, soul saving business, soul development business. And they feel, and a lot of what they say, a lot of their strategies seem to be the reverse of what I believe. And all I can say is I feel like I've been more successful than they have. I've got evidence and proof of that. But they won't want to listen to a crazy man like me. Just felt like I never fitted in with them. Again, not saying this for self-pity, I'm saying this for the record. I think that there's a lot of people that they're not listening to that can't be heard because I think the way they are, the way their system is, it thins out the people that can be involved. I think for a long time, especially where addiction treatment has been concerned, they've left it to the private sector. Now they've got you like Turning Points and Change Grow Lives that are getting most of the funding. But I don't think that's necessarily effective treatment. if the problem's getting worse, how can it be? And so, so I think that's my sort of starting point is I can't see that we have yet discovered how to succeed in drug and alcohol treatment. And I think why it's getting worse, because one, we've not got good treatment, because again, even that statistic on the ketamine is if they knew back then. When was the last time you see an advert on telly about how bad ketamine is for you? If you weren't doing this for a job, how much do you think you would have heard about how bad drugs is for you? So where's the campaign to stop it? When they knew it was getting worse, they knew it was a problem enough to make a law to say stop doing it, but then that's about it. They usually, you'll usually get a leaflet when you're already addicted to it, telling you all about it, but you don't usually find out much until it's too bad for them to ignore anymore. And so I think that is going to happen. The answer to your question is I think it's going to get incredibly worse. Because the trouble with drugs is it's contagious. You generally catch it off other people. And see, it's the same like what I believe about the American opiate crisis that's becoming the British opiate crisis. Because America created an opiate crisis by prescribing pharmaceuticals that are opiate based or synthetic opiate based. The trouble with that is I look at addiction like an allergy. If you imagine it's like a peanut allergy, but if you never had a peanut, you'd never know you had the allergy. But when you start handing out the peanuts to the population, you can end up with a lot more people. And what generally happens, they're like, oh, we've got a peanut epidemic because all of these people are having reactions to peanuts. I wonder what's happened. I wonder what's happened to make them all allergic to peanuts all of a sudden. It's like, well, you're handing out all the peanuts to more people. If you just left the peanuts in a market and let them choose their own peanuts, only a few people are going to want the peanuts. But if you start handing them out to everybody that is ill, it creates more people that never would have been introduced to opiates, got introduced to opiates by the pharmaceuticals, by the doctors, because of illness. And so I think that's how drug addiction spreads. And in our country, it's just so accessible that more people that are doing it, obviously the more people are going to do it because more people are going to get introduced to it, which is kind of what happens. And unfortunately, young people get introduced to things at parties when they're having a drink. And when you're having a drink, it reduces your inhibitions and you may do things that you normally wouldn't do. But I think that, and so it's kind of like a disease that spreads addiction. I think that's why in some countries they like to kill dealers and drug addicts because they think it stops it spreading. And again, I think it's probably a bit extreme, but there is definitely truth to that. A dead drug dealer can't sell drugs. He's not going to kill anyone else, is he? So again, it's not pleasant liberal thinking, but it certainly works. And so I think that, I think there is too much tolerance. And I think like you were saying, especially with things like hallucinogenics, marijuana, and ketamine, because there's also a whole host of people that believe that these are very good treatments, which again, letting them be treatments is just introducing more people to these highly addictive drugs. And again, I don't know the figures on, how many people would become addicted to opiates if they were introduced to them. I don't know the figure on how many people would become addicted to ketamine if they were introduced to it, but we're going to find out. we're going to find out that how many, I mean, I'm sure not many people at the moment get addicted to ketamine because they've been to some sort of therapy for some mental condition and been microdosing, but it does seem quite becoming more of a popular thing to microdose certain drugs, and it may have an effect on some people at that. I don't really know, but I don't think, I'm not against drugs. If I'm not against alcohol, I think they have a place in this world to a degree. I'm more concerned about drug and alcohol abuse and mindless dispensing of it. You know, I can't help come to the conclusion that, you know, when we don't have better treatments, we generally give people painkillers and chemicals. It doesn't mean there isn't better treatments, or we should be looking for better treatments, but it seems chemicals seem to be the preferred treatment for most ailments that could be resolved in different ways. But like I'm saying, I think we kind of bottlenecked into a group of people that believe different, from the pharmaceutical companies at the top to the dispensers that we call doctors, and then the people around them that make sure you get dispensed your drug of choice as harmlessly as they can possibly make it, which I think is where we're headed. That they're just trying to make, well, it's harm minimalisation. They're going to try and dispense drugs in a way that, you know, it's out of control. Drug use is what's most dangerous. If you can get controlled drug use, that is going to be less dangerous. Is it good? Well, to some people, it's a step in the right direction, but I don't think better than worse is good necessarily. It's not bad, but better than worse is not good. Good is good, not better than worse. We seem to be adopting a better than worse, but again, it's extreme. Like in Scotland with their consumption rooms, it's an extreme solution for an extreme problem. But that's, again, seems to be one of them problems, isn't it? They let the problem get extreme, and then we need extreme responses. You know, just reading an article yesterday about a girl saying, I don't know if it was on the mainstream news, I didn't see it on there, I see it on the internet, but saying that they waited for a bulimia to get to near death door before they'd really do anything. I think that's a bit of a problem when they say there's shortage of funding. It's only the worst cases get the help, and I don't know again whether that's good use of finances. It's, I guess this is the political argument, isn't it? It's like all of that money that, you know, we were talking about the million homes. Labour are promising that now, aren't they? Did you see that? But Labour are promising to build them million homes for the low end. But then you think, man, you think what would happen if they invested, and again, I don't know whether this is conservative thinking, I'll have to let someone smarter than me tell me that, but you imagine all that amount of money that's going to take to build them homes. Imagine if you put that money into the middle class, like into supporting development, business, if you put that money into universities, if you put that money into developing instead of burying it in a hole, the amount of development would cause a massive amount more taxes, and then that money from the taxes could go back into supporting the people that are struggling. But again, for some reason, everybody in the middle classes in the country is struggling, and they want to give all the extra money to the people that are at the bottom. It's just going to become buried. It just always seems like the funding goes to the wrong place. It's kind of like, you know, like you can't get a council house if you're doing well. You've got to be doing really bad to get any help. But it comes down to that. It just, everything seems to be upside down to me. And again, it's like, it's not just a philosophy. Everything seems to be failing at the minute. The prison system's overflowing. They've been closing down prisons. Oh, by the way, all the prisons that are closed down have become housing developments. All the mental institutions that closed down become housing developments. All over the country when I was growing up. They started this care in the community. So they had all these, little cities where people with problems could go and stay. They closed them all down and turned them into housing. They seem to do that quite a lot. And so, you know, all of the good things that I've seen seem to close down. And then all you're left with is this next group of people promising to fix it if you give them all the funding. And so I don't think things have got better. I don't think the drug situation's got better. I don't think the criminal situation's got better. I don't think the hospitals have got better. I remember like doing talks in hospitals for the A&E nurses and doctors, and we're having a discussion along these lines, and it said to them, what do you think the problem is? They're like, funding. I said, do you remember a time when funding weren't a problem? And they went, well, yeah. I said, was it better then? They said, no. See, people think money's going to fix it. It don't. Management fixes it. Good management fix things, not loads of money. You can have all the money in the world with bad managers, and all you end up with is the NHS, a big cash cow that's spending, and there's no way of privatising it. Even though I think that you might get, I think everything's got its pros and cons, but I don't think it's working. And having the next, do you think if the Tories could have fixed it, they would have fixed it? They know their survival depends on it. If one thing they could fix would be the NHS, do you think that Labour are going to fix it? They didn't fix it when Blair was in. They can't fix it because they're just bad management. And I don't think it can be fixed. And I don't think that management's ever going to become different. I can't imagine, I don't know if everybody's having this problem. What do you think about the two political parties at the moment? Do you show any interest in it?
Yeah, well, for me, it just always feels like you're voting towards the lesser of two evils. It doesn't seem like anyone really gets a chance to make any developments because there's too many powers pulling this way and that way. And you always go, you go on about funding a lot there, and it's totally just all down to money, isn't it? You look at the NHS and the bad management, just the cost that the NHS pay for their medicines and their supplies is far more than any private company would ever pay. And it's a private company that are making those supplies that are getting the money. So
yeah, well, I got a booper. When you got a booper, which is costing me not a lot of money every month, the service is like, it's just unbelievable. It's literally unbelievable, my private healthcare. And they haven't got anywhere near the amount of people subscribing to it as the NHS. It's like you're in a clean waiting room, everyone's running on time pretty much. It's pleasant. It's just pleasant. And you think, if they can do this, how's the NHS, which is getting infinitely more funding, why is it so difficult? And why is it running so badly? Why is there such long waiting lists? Why is it everyone unhappy in there? They're all striking. No one's happy. Oh, my dad went into the NHS, and it was just terrible. It just stunk. It was terrible. People were unhappy. I mean, they were doing their best, but they're unhappy because, again, they're being pressurised by the system. And it's like, we need a new system. This system just ain't working. So when people go, what do you think about drug addiction? Look, whatever system we're under ain't working, and it ain't going to work. You can't make a pig's ear. You can't make a silk purse out of a pig's ear. And I don't completely know what the answer is, except the mindset that runs this country, it's not working. Look, it's better than Africa. It's better than other countries, but like I said earlier, is better than bad, good. There's something ain't working. The mental health's not working. The schools ain't working. It's just not working. And more money ain't going to fix it. more money is going to make it worse. Because when they're taking all that money, they're making the people with the money poor and fed up. And if the people with the money get too fed up, they're going to stop working and there's going to be less money. Less money will make it worse, but more money won't make it better. Less money will make it worse, more money won't make it better. That's a shitty situation. I learned that, mate. Running a bad company when you're making loads of money, it goes all right until you run out of money. And then all the problems that you're covering up with the money start becoming apparent. And so the difficult conversation, I wish I had a nice, fluffy answer, but nor have they. They ain't got the answer. All I know is I run a very successful rehab in a certain way that worked for quite a lot of people that wanted that kind of treatment. And it was tangible, notice what we did, and I don't see that happening very many places. It's more than just a rehab. You go and get a detox. It's an environment. It's a community that you enter into that changes the way that you think. But if you don't have, it's like going to a university or going on a plumbing course. If they're not teaching you plumbing, you're not going to come out a very good plumber at the other end. Because we understand recovery, we can teach recovery, but we need you for a period of time, depending on your abilities to begin with. If you're not very well educated and not worked and not brought up in a great environment, we may need you for 9 months to get a decent foundation in your head. If you've been working and had a decent sort of family and got some skills, you're a bit more matured, 6 weeks we could do good work with you and explain it to you. But it always took about at least 4 to 6 weeks to get reasonably well adjusted people to understand. Most of the other guys, it would take 6 to 9 months in a very strong environment, which I don't see that environment existing. All they kept saying to us was, you're too expensive. Yet they're saying every pound they give me gives a £4 return to society. Makes no sense. If they said to me, what's the problem? It would be like, why did you stop giving me the pound? What mad person stops giving you the pound? Because I'll tell you what kind of mad person does that. It's like that. If you're giving me £1 and I'm giving you £4 back, what mad person would stop giving me the pound? I'll tell you what one, a political one. A political person would stop giving you the pound to try and carry favour with someone that'll vote for them. Does that make me a conspiracy theorist? That's just the reality. And so I don't know, mate. I've got a very bleak view of the future. I feel like I'm a canary in the mine. I'm trying to throw up the red flags, but people just think you're being negative. But I've been throwing up the red flag for quite a few years, and we seem to be still heading in that direction. And it ain't getting better. And the mind of the people in charge haven't changed. Funny thing is, all of the harm minimalisation people think we're doing recovery. And it's the recovery agenda that's causing the problem. But the truth is, since about, as far as I can tell, since about 25 years ago, when they started opening up local government-funded drug and alcohol agencies, we've been pretty much doing harm minimalisation. And I can see, since we've been doing harm minimalisation, things have been getting worse. I think that's just facts. And the more money we've spent, because there's more money being spent now than ever before, it's getting worse. There's more money being spent on the NHS now than ever before. They say they're going to put more money in. There's never been more money spent on the NHS than there is right now. There's never been more money spent on prisons than there is right now. There's never more money being spent on anything than there is right now. The people might go, well, the prices are rising. I'm like, yeah, I blame the government for that as well. But the truth is, there's never been more money spent than there is now. And it's continually failing. And it's like being on a train that's heading for a big crash. But until you actually hit the wall, no one believes you're crashing. Even though you can see big chunks of the train being ripped off. And I think we're heading to a big crash. And the people driving the train are mad. Like you say, I think you're a very different kind of person than me. But I agree with you. I think most people agree with you. I don't want to vote for any of these people. But who else are we going to vote for? That's my point. My point is we're stuck in a system with people that don't know what they're doing, telling us what to do, that are leading us down a bad path. And I don't know anybody, I've not heard anybody that I think would lead us in a different direction. Because I think we need a different system. I just think this whole system is just not right. But I know it's absolutely complex, and people would go, well, what should we do then? What do you think? It's like, well, it's complicated, mate. I'm not saying I've got all the answers. All I know is what I've learned with my life is that I need to take honest infantry, and I can't kid myself about the values. And I've got to look at myself to see what I'm doing that's wrong. And then I've got to readjust myself, and reality should tell me if what I'm doing is right or not. And I tried to run a rehab like that and become very successful at it. And like I say, I closed down a very successful rehab because I was just completely drained by society. Like most people, not whinging and whining. Well, not whinging and whining, it's wrong. Society should be ashamed of itself. They were massive drain on us. People who haven't even got a clue what they're doing, telling us what to do, and then enforcing it by stupid laws. And I had the Commission of Suffolk come and tell me, after the Commissioner before her sent an email out based on somebody lying, to stop sending people to our rehab. Done infinite damage. Then the stupid CQC turned up with their stupid new policies and procedures that done us infinite damage. Then the stupid government cut back half our money and done damage. And then the new commissioner, after the last stupid one left, come and had a meeting with me and said, look, why have you left helping being part of our community? I said, because you destroyed me. And that's a bad relationship. It's like a very dysfunctional relationship being involved with you, and I don't want your money. Your money's going to make me sick. And she said, well, what can we do to get you to work with us again? I said, come and listen to what I've got to tell you. Let me tell you what I believe and why I believe what you're doing ain't never going to work. And she come and spoke to me, but by then I'd kind of realised policy, procedure, safeguarding, even though it all sounds good and it's necessary, it's going to destroy us. And she sat and listened for about an hour or two while I told her what I believe was going on and why I believe what I was doing was working and what I was doing was failing. And she said this. She said, I will never put outcome before policy and procedure. She said, I will never put outcome before policy and procedure. And I think right there is the problem in this country. They're all policy officers. They're all politician, policy, and it just crushes us. They're trying to control us. They're taking away too many of our freedoms. And we can't do our jobs because we can't keep up with doing everything they want and getting on with the real world. And I don't know how that sounds to people, but I think that's the truth. If they're not going to focus on outcome, and I noticed this, mate, and I'll finish on this. I noticed this when I come back from Canada. I probably had the freest experience of my life. I lived on this island for 3 years. There was no cops. It was a pretty cool place to be. There was no like government interference. It was just a community of 400 people. The police would turn up when they needed every now and then, which is exactly how you want them to be. And when I come back from there, I ended up having to go in the dole office for some reason, and there was a recession on in England. And in the street that I lived in, there was a corner house on the corner, and it was a council estate I grew up on. And I think these people were like the top end of the bottom and the bottom end of the top. They were like different from the rest of us. They had a garage built, they had a nice car, they had a nice house, a nice garden. They were different. They were like I think they were like clumped in with the working class because they were not quite middle class. And they were hard people to get on with, and they were angry at all of us all the time. Get off there! Don't park here! Get off there! Get off there! I won't say their name, but you kind of had a bit of respect for them because their house was nice. They didn't want nothing to do with the rest of us. Don't ever remember them being at a party or joining in any of the jolly times we had. And they seemed angry. But I remember that. So now I'm like 28 years old, and I was in the dole office, and it just seemed to be full of people with drug and alcohol problems. It was not pleasant being in there. And I see this lady come in, and I'd heard that her husband had died not so long before. And so for some reason, she must have had to come and sign on. And so she's quite an older lady then. And I remember seeing her in there and the distress I could see on her face. And I went over to her and said, "You Mrs. M, let's call her." And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, I'm Lester. Used to live on your road and all that. Are you all right?" And she looked like she was having a breakdown. She says, "I can't cope. My husband died. I'm having to come in here and I don't know what to do. All they do is getting me filling out forms and queuing up." And she said she just looked like a fish out of water. And anyway, I called one of the people in the dole office over that worked there and said, "Look, this lady really needs some help." And he said, and I thought, this is it. It was just one of them moments that it's like looking behind the curtain of the Wizard of Oz. And he said to her, "What's your problem?" She said, "I just can't fill any more forms in or queue up anymore. I want to complain." She said, how can I complain?" He said, "Fill this form in and queue up over there." And I thought, once you start seeing behind the facade of it all, and do you know what? The best thing to do, which she was never going to do, throw a chair through a window, kick the tables over, piss in the corner, shout and scream, and you will get to the front of the queue. It's horrible. It's horrible. But I think that's what this is all founded on. It's horrible. But that's just my point of view, and I even consider myself a bit mental, but it don't make me wrong. At least the section of society that I'm in, that what I see, it ain't good. And I don't know how we're going to change the mind of the people that run this country and the people that follow. People go, "Oh, well, politics is like," that ain't the solution, mate. Politics ain't the solution. Politics the cause of the problem. So keep voting for the thing that causes you the problem. Is not going to solve the problem. Labour ain't going to solve the problem. Everyone's like, Labour are definitely going to get in. They ain't going to solve the problem. If the Tories could have solved the problems would be solved, wouldn't they? They can't solve the problem. They're creating the problem. But this is the system. And then people go, "Well, this is the best we could hope for in the world that we live in." That could be true. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. All I know is there is solutions to these problems. but it doesn't benefit everybody to solve them. And so the people that are struggling the worst, unfortunately, they're the least, they're the ones that are benefiting least. The ones that are doing well are the ones that are benefiting most. It's kind of funny, isn't it? All these crises we're having are enriching people. There's people getting very rich off the NHS. There's people getting very rich off the prison system. There's people getting very rich off all this methadone and drugs that we're passing out. There's people getting very rich off of rehabs. Money ain't the problem. But I don't know if that answers any questions, but where ketamine's concerned, mate, I'm it is a growing problem. We got Jack, I think, next Saturday, haven't we? Not the Saturday coming, the Saturday after. So he's been through the mill on ketamine on our Altered Attitudes podcast. So I'm really looking forward to. It's not something that I've done or even come across much in a deep sense. So I'm really looking forward to interviewing him and getting his insights on, because he's successfully got treatment and he's doing good for 2-3 years. So he's been really down low in it. His body's been severely damaged by it. The guy knows his stuff. So that's going to be coming out in a couple of weeks on our Altered Attitudes podcast with Jack about ketamine. So I'm excited to talk to him. And again, look, I'm saying all this stuff because I want to be of help. I don't just want to be negative and miserable. I honestly believe what I'm saying. We need to discuss, we need to look at, we need to see, look, how can we improve this situation? I know all them people are trying to do their best, but again, you've got to be honest with yourself. We're failing. We're failing a lot of people. Why is the prison system failing? It's ridiculous. Why is it so dirty and disgusting? It's not a good place to put people. Do we just want to punish everybody and put them in places that are going to make them worse? That's such an old, out-of-date way of thinking, isn't it? Now, I know if somebody does a crime to me, I want them to see him punished and hurt, but it's not very civilized. That's just somebody hurt. I think, we need to find better ways of helping people improve. But these systems need real good looking at, and I think we need to change the way we're doing things. But I think I'm just repeating myself now. I don't know what else to say.
Well, I think you've summed it up there, Lester, by basically poor management. It's a great way of looking at it. Again, there's no obvious solutions, but we do have a general election coming up, and I'm sure there'll be lots of promises. And we'll perhaps do some coverage on it near.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Sorry. that Robin Williams, God bless him soul, he said that. He said politicians are like nappies. They need changing regularly for the same reasons. They're full of shit.
Yeah, we'll see what their policies say, and if they come through on any of them, which let's face it, it isn't going to get fixed overnight. But yeah, I really appreciate your time, Lester. We'll get this podcast up, and a couple of weeks' time, we've got Jack on to talk about ketamine in some more detail, which is going to be a really interesting one.
It's going to be a good one.
A hot topic at the moment.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.
All right. Thanks for your time.